Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to the American Jazz Museum. We are live from the Atrium in our facility. My name is Rashida Phillips. I'm the Executive Director here at the Jazz Museum, and so pleased to welcome all of you tonight to a brand new series for us. The series is called The Big Break, and a lot of it came out of the impetus of the Soul of Jazz movie. How many of you have seen the Disney movie Soul? Show me a show of hands. Any favorite characters? Dorothea, all right. Other ones? Mittens, it's the cat. 22, Joe Gardner, really the star of the show. Well, it was really Joe Gardner that really got us going. Most of you, if you remember, have seen the movie. Joe Gardner was a day-to-day music teacher, and we love our music teachers. So shout out to those teachers who are in the districts who are really pulling our kids along this year, especially during a pandemic. We recognize all of that hard work, and particularly with the arts. It's really critical that we keep that in schools. Joe Gardner had a bigger dream as well, too, and that was to be a professional jazz musician. His big break arrives when he's invited to play at a club in New York called the Half Note Club with other notable musicians. We felt like this program was really a wonderful opportunity to have conversations with some of our Kansas City luminaries about their big breaks. We know it takes a lot of work. We know that journey isn't always easy, but somehow there's a pathway that leads to making it. And so tonight, I'm happy to welcome our special guest, Enrique Chi, who is the band leader for Making Movies. Critically acclaimed album, ameri'kana, has lifted the band into international acclaim. ameri'kana was the #1 album on the NACC Latin Music Chart and also reached #8 on the Billboard World Music Chart. NPR recognized No Te Calles, the band's collaboration with Ruben Blades, as one of the best of 2019. It was the first track on Blades' album, Paraiso Road Gang, which was nominated for the Album of the Year at the Latin Grammys. The song and video were also featured at the 2019 Latin Grammys telecast. Enrique and the band have made it a point to stay connected to the community. In 2017, Enrique launched Art as Mentorship, a nonprofit organization empowering young people through music to write their own success stories. Artist Mentorship envisions an inclusive community where historically underrepresented artists are emboldened to raise their voices through music, transform young artists through access to world-class mentorship, real-world skill development, and mental health support. So let's put our hands together and welcome Enrique to conversation. Thank you so much. So we just talked a little bit about Joe Gardner and his journey to being a professional musician, his big break. Let's talk a little bit about your journey as a musician. I know that your band has roots in Panama and Mexico, and here you are in the middle of the US. So what is that life like with your genre-bending Afro-Latin rhythms and rock and roll riffs?
It was, at the beginning, you know, we were just really hungry, and we would play anywhere they'd let us play. So I would, call my friends who were in bands, and we would play anything from the punk rock basement venue in Bakersfield, California, to the Mexican restaurant on the outskirts of Dallas that had a Latin rock night, to the international kids in Omaha, Nebraska, going to Creighton University, their party house, the living room, or in San Francisco, these kind of, now he's a guitar player for a Grammy-winning artist, Fantastic Negrito, but at the time he was part of just like a group of kind of San Francisco hippies, and they had this house where they would throw parties, and we played that living room too. So at the beginning, we just played anywhere that people would let us play music, and people, we didn't fit in most of those environments, and ultimately I think that was a good thing.
So how would you describe your music? Do you put a label on it? Because there's so many influences in there.
I think that it's, there's not a great name for it, and I don't think a name exists for it, but music's just music. But we joke that it's like a soup, right? So if in New York City, all these Latino immigrants were making records that had mix of genres from their various countries, and a Jewish man in New York was like, I got an idea. When we have a record with all those different genres, why don't we call it salsa? So people realize this is a blend of all these disparate things, you know? So I think that our music is sopa, because sopa is soup. So it's like, it's been boiled down a little bit, right? So salsa maybe is just freshly ground, different elements, and ours is just like, they've been cooked down, so you just can't tell exactly what ingredient made that gumbo or the stew or the whatever taste that way, but you know there's some stuff in there that's making it spicy.
That's right. I love sopa. What about some of the research that your group did? Some of the instruments that you play, because I know there's a variety of instrumentation.
Well, I don't think it wasn't so much research. It was just kind of like our lives brought it to us. Juan Carlos, he's the percussionist in our band, but he also plays some keys and stuff, and he plays congas, timbales, and like bell patterns. And he didn't learn all those instruments on purpose. What happened is there weren't enough musicians in Kansas City to play in a salsa band that they were trying to form, so they called Juan Carlos's dad, and he goes, "Oh, I'm too old for that. You're gonna call my son. If you're gonna be out late, call him. He's 13. He's learning how to play the drums. He'll be fine, you know." And so at first, and he played like the Blue Room as a teenager. He was just holding the cowbell, bing, 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 and then later like, "You're doing good with that. Let's give you some drums." And then little by little, he started figuring it out, and that training has allowed him to kind of play these diverse instruments with the band.
Yeah, you build those rhythms, right? I mean, that really makes that sopa, as you mentioned.
That's right.
So what inspires you? What's your process like in terms of creating or putting together new music?
I think everything you do in life can be an inspiration, and I think that like making sure you slow down enough. I would say this: when you get the blessing of having music become your work, you can be so consumed by the work that you are forgetting to slow down and experience life again. And I'm not a big fan of songs where songwriters are complaining about being songwriters. Like at a certain point, if that's all you're doing all the time is music, 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 you don't have anything to talk about. So it's good to just try to stay connected to real life and observe things and experience other art forms. But that's like inspiration. But then you mentioned process. Process for me, I think it's a discipline now. It's like just having to always write. I got great advice from my ex-manager. We parted ways years ago, but we had him on a Zoom class with our camp students at our summer camp that we did, and he had his like first big break being the A&R representative for the Red Hot Chili Peppers in the late 80s, so as they first entered mainstream culture. And he told me this. He said that he's noticed over the many years of being in music that the most successful artists never turn off the thing that fuels them, no matter what stage of the process they're in, right? So you kind of, as an artist, you're kind of like a farmer. You have a season of planting, and then a season of harvesting, and then a season of resting, and then repeats again. So if there's a part of the process that you don't like if you hate interviews, thankfully I don't. I like interviews, it's fun, I like talking. But some folks hate interviews. If you don't like interviews, but you're needing to promote your product, well, if the part that you love is performing, make sure you keep that in there. If the part that you love is rehearsing, then make sure you keep that in your schedule, even if you have to minimize it for that season and then bring it back to its importance. So I took that to heart. So even when I'm really busy promoting, my favorite part is writing. So I try to set up writing sessions, even if it doesn't really make sense logistically. I don't need a new song right now, but it keeps me kind of connected to why I love doing this.
Great. In the film, Curly, who's pictured here, who's the drummer in the soul film, calls up Joe Gardner, his music teacher, former music teacher, and lets him know about the opportunities to appear with Dorothea Williams at the half note. And this is just a moment that Joe has. This is a moment, a sort of a pinnacle, an apex, where he's really finally feeling as if he is making it, right? He has that big break. This is big time for him. This is his opportunity. So I'm curious about your turning point in your career. Was there a moment that you felt like this destiny was on your horizon? And what was your sort of big break opportunity?
So I kind of resist that idea that it's one big one big moment. Like that's nice for a narrative, for a movie or a book, but life is not often like that, But for me, I had a few. The first, a mini breakthrough was at Knuckleheads. We had the opportunity to open up for a band called Los Lobos, and we were playing, and they were on their bus, And Steve Berlin was hearing some music he liked. He's the saxophone player in the band, but also kind of their producer and driving creative force. At least he wrangles their creative energy and when it's time to make records. And he poked his head out of the bus to figure out what album they were playing. And then he saw it was us. So after the show, he came up to us and said, you know, if you want to make a record, please call me first. And I had to pretend that we were cool, and we had a bunch of other people to call to not let him know that that was the first producer number I had to call. So we called him the next day, like, hey, we thought about it. Yeah, we're going to call you first. And then we set on a path to make an album together, and that helped us break into a little bit into the national conversation. We got some NPR support. We did like a Tiny Desk concert off that album and some other things. But then there was some rocky patches. So the record label / management company that we had signed to changed direction, dropped us. We had to buy back our album. And for a musician being like, oh, I have to find $20,000 to buy back the rights to put out my own album, that sucks. And so we were kind of downtrodden, but we met a new manager at the Folk Alliance conference here and started a relationship, and he kind of reactivated our spirits a bit. And so we went after this album. We got a chance to do a tour with Hooray for the Riff Raff, which was great. So that took us around the country. We played like the Fillmore for the first time and a few of these other places. And then we were like setting up to play this San Diego kind of like fratty dive bar. Like, it was not a great gig. And the Latin Grammys were happening, and we had put out the album ourselves, and we were literally like kicking ourselves in the butt. We're like, man, this is why you don't run your own record label, because you make stupid decisions like being in LA when the Latin Grammys are happening. Everybody from LA is in Las Vegas that you need to talk to or invite to your show. So we were sending a bunch of emails in the van like, hey, come out to our show, publicist, promoter, industry person, you should come see this. And they're like, I would love to, but I'll be in Las Vegas at the Latin Grammys. We're like, dang, that was dumb. Better, lesson learned. We'll do it. We won't do it again next time. And that's when we got I saw a tweet that Ruben Blades, who has been an icon for me, he's like a Bob Dylan-like figure for Latin music. He's so respected, and he's on the Latin Grammys red carpet, and they asked him, what music are you into right now? Are you into anything here at the Grammys? And he said, basically, no, nothing here. But I found this band on the internet called Making Movies. I think 2 of them are from Panama. There are other people from here. They're from Kansas, because nobody knows what Kansas City is until they're, I think they're from Kansas. And I really love their sound. And then he put on his social media platforms, which have cumulatively over a couple million followers, between his Twitter and stuff. And he said, I want to collaborate with Making Movies. And we were all like, what? That's crazy. And I think that might have been the moment where we realized, well, I think we probably are supposed to be doing this.
Right. Well, you spoke a little earlier about mixing up the interview with performance. So, I think it's a good point to do that. Maybe you'd like to share a song with us or share a selection?
Yeah, so.
Absolutely, put your hands together.
Should I do one right now and then one later? Is that how it works? Yeah. So one thing that we learned in our journey where we started to explore more music is I don't really look, when I think about the word American music, we're at the American Jazz Museum. I think of America as the continent, actually the 2 continents. So the hemisphere maybe is a better word for it. And the stories are so connected. So in Panama, there's a rhythm that they call típico music. And that means typical music. So that's their way of saying, this is folk music. This is our music, like common folk music. In Colombia, they call it cumbia. Some Colombian musicians moved to Mexico City and made a career out of it. And so Mexico City loves cumbia. That made its way up to Texas. We got Selena, who did cumbia. And all that story, that's all American music to me. And so much of it is connected to the black roots in the Americas. Because the little dance step that you do for cumbia, they say that started when slaves were still in shackles. And that's why it's kind of like short movements between the legs. And so that story doesn't sound so different from the blues to me. So I think of cumbia and the blues as sisters. So this is a little Making Movies cumbia song. aquí, yo no te quiero ver. Córrete de mí, yo no te quiero ver a más. Quítate de aquí, yo no te quiero ver. Córrete de mí, yo no te quiero ver a más. Se aminora la marcha, se aminora la marcha. Oh, Quítate de aquí, eres mi pesadilla. Córrete de mí, eres mi pesadilla. Oye, me ha pisado como una hormiga. Quítate de aquí, eres mi pesadilla. Se aminora la marcha, se aminora la marcha. Se aminora la marcha, se aminora la marcha. Oh. So in Latin America, when a cumbia is really happening, the crowd does this. They go, hey, 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 hey. So I was wondering if y'all would join me here. Y'all with me? All right. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey, hey, hey. Se aminora la marcha, se aminora la marcha. Se aminora la marcha, se aminora la marcha. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. So, not like music is all of your life because, you have so much time to do all the other things. I'm pretty amazed at you in terms of the ways that you can balance being a professional full-time musician and run a nonprofit called Art as Mentorship. So, I want to be able to also open up questions online to those who are tuning in. Please put your information in the chat and we'll try to reach some of those questions at the end when we do a Q&A for the audience. But I'm curious about Art as Mentorship. Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to create that nonprofit and what were those musical experiences that led to it?
So we were in Texas. This was back when we were playing those restaurants and those basements and stuff. And our friends took us to a space kind of not so dissimilar from this in the city that they had a music program, an organization called Network for Young Artists in San Antonio, Texas. And it was placed in the inner city, so folks who maybe didn't have that much affluence could participate because you could pay $12 a month and you could take guitar lessons Monday, vocals Tuesday, dance Wednesday, piano Thursday, and then you could perform in a bunch of performances around town that they had set up for the students. And you could pick, one of the above, all of the above, just make sure you're chipping in a little bit of money. And the money was mostly a placeholder for showing that the families had some skin in the game, not because it really ran off those $12. And we were just like, man, this is amazing. And they didn't think there's anything like this, at least not for immigrant kids, for Latino kids like us in Kansas City. So when we came home, I asked the director of the Mattie Rhodes Center if we could borrow their space for a week and throw a music camp. And we ran that camp for 5-6 years in the historic Northeast, so not very far from here. And the families would ask us the next week, like, well, what are we doing next week? This camp was awesome. It's like, I don't know what we're doing next week. I go back to playing my gigs or whatever. And we finally decided, well, you know what, in order to grow this, and we had false starts. Like, we tried to do more programming, and then I realized quickly that without foundation and an organization and structure, all good intentions, you can kind of fizzle out just because people get a little burnt out or whatever. But decided to start an organization, and I didn't call it, the Making Movies Foundation or anything like that, because I knew that once I went down that path, that was going to be 3 or 4 years of work to build it up. I wanted other artists to be able to tap in, and I say that intentionally in case there's an artist tuned in or someone stumbles into this, and if you've ever had the thought of like, I want to do something to give back, we're hoping to become kind of a vehicle to accept artists' ideas, and artist-led initiatives for the community like ours was. We wanted to just start a one-week camp, never envisioned all these other things.
So what are your goals for artist mentorship? You mentioned that the families really wanted to push beyond the 1 week. What does it look like today? What are some goals in the future that you'd like to reach?
Well, what it looks like today is we're about to launch something called the Rebel Song Academy, and we're right at the last window for recruitment. So for folks listening, if you know teenagers from 11 to 17 years old, we're looking for 20 really hungry young artists. And that doesn't mean you have to have a lot of skills on any instrument or any particular musical craft, but it means that you really have the desire to make your own music. Because it's a 12-week curriculum that takes a young person through the process of music making. And the beauty of focusing around songwriting is that songwriting kind of naturally pulls you into thoughts that are connected to your own mental health, because it's a reflection of how you feel on the inside. So you have to slow down and think about how you feel on the inside before you create. And we worked with a really talented art therapist to write this curriculum in a way that could touch on those issues that young people are facing right now, which I could go down a whole rabbit hole of that, but it is a mental health crisis. Ask any mental health person, professional, or go Google an article, and you're going to find out that the numbers for all the bad things that you attribute mental health issues to are just did this in the last 2 or 3 years. So we need to be very conscious of that. And so this is a program that we're looking for the 20 kids who will dive in and need this the most, and it's totally free. And we've built a recording studio in downtown Overland Park in a partnership with Interurban Art House. And we locked in some support from H&R Block to address an accessibility issue. Because we would take the kids from the Matty Rhodes camp to recording studios. We'd drive them we'd rent a school bus or rent a van and take them to recording studios. Well, now we have one. So we don't have to rent the studio anymore, but we still need to figure out how to get kids from different parts of town to this resource. And so that's something that's happening this year. Then there's music camps in the summer, and we're launching a festival in September, and we're super excited to announce we just landed an NEA award for the festival that'll be here in the Crossroads a few blocks this way, so a few blocks west of us. So yeah, so that's kind of the year for artist mentorship. And you said, where do you thinking looking forward? This Rebel Song Academy concept, what's cool is that it doesn't take that much it doesn't take that many resources to implement it. It just takes people to have a shared vision. And so there's an organization in Topeka that is implementing this curriculum in April in a partnership with the Boys and Girls Club. So I think that what it looks like in the future, and that's again that call to artists, if you're an artist from another community or another community within our region even, it could be in Lee Summit or Lawrence, or could be somewhere else, and you have this desire to help community, this program is modular. You could implement it and work with 10 kids in another community, and we could help facilitate that. And maybe you don't have to carry the burden of building out a not-for-profit with a board and an office and bylaws and all that stuff. So that's why we named it Art as Mentorship and not the music camp or the Rebel Song Academy or whatever, because in case that maybe some other folks may have great ideas but not have the bandwidth to take on all that administrative, maybe we could be a solution for them.
Yeah, we love that. I think that's where we first had our conversation. We were talking about supporting young people and thinking about community and partnership together. We here at the Jazz Museum also have a jazz academy for middle and high schoolers who are really interested in learning more about instruments and combos, because as you mentioned, young folks have a voice. They are more expressive than ever. And so to give them the tools and the resources and the capabilities to be able to do that and be successful, I think is critically important. Here at the museum, we also have to balance quite a bit. I'm thinking about asking you in terms of balancing your life as a musician and a leader of a nonprofit. We balance a lot here. We've got live music. We've got community that comes to us to host events. We also have a school. There's a lot that's going on. And so I'm wondering what that life is like for you. Do you sleep at night? What keeps you awake at night? How do you find the balance?
I don't know if I've found the balance yet. Peter works with Artist Mentorship here. He's the program coordinator, so if y'all have any questions, you can talk to Peter I. But there are some sleepless nights. I fly out at 6 in the morning to Los Angeles tomorrow, and I'm not sure if I'll make it to bed between now and tomorrow, but we'll see if I can sneak in a couple hours. I try not to do that often, but I think that it's, you have to become really efficient, and you have to try to figure out how to only do what you can do, and then get people around you and build a beautiful team of folks who can do the things that they do best. It's a team sport. There's no way to do it all by yourself. You go crazy.
And I think, the nice thing about having bandmates and having young people, they just bring energy to you.
Yeah.
Even if they're going through moments of hardship, there's something about rallying together and really sort of fulfilling and looking after those dreams that really pushes you forward. So really thankful that you're able to, attempt that balance and hope that you continue forward because we love what you're doing.
Thank you.
I want to open it up to the audience for any questions. Anything come to mind that you'd like to ask Enrique? Yes.
You were talking about Panama, and I grew up in Leavenworth, and they had Fort Leavenworth up there. So they had lots of military people that were stationed in Panama. Were your parents from Panama, and that's how you ended up? Were your parents in the military in Panama?
Oh, that's a great question. No, they were not. So I just have a really spread, kind of immigrant family. So my great grandfather is Chinese. So that's why my last name is Chi, because he immigrated to Panama and started a family there. So great grandfather. Then grandfather went and studied at Tulane in New Orleans. My great grandfather made a bunch of money with cockfighting houses and gambling and prostitution. He crushed it, and then he sent my grandfather to college in New Orleans. Which, think about, from the scale of the economies of a Central American country to send your kid to American college. He must have done great. And then as fate has it, and karma does, he died a poor man. He lost all his money through bad business ventures and a bunch of other crazy stories. And so my grandfather married an American woman when he was in college here, and then took her bravely, I can't imagine being 22-year-old Southern belle, to small town Central America. And then she lived the rest of her life there. My dad was born there, so he spoke English his whole life because of his mom. And then my mom and dad got married. They're high school sweethearts, small town in Panama. And my dad wanted to study in the U.S., met some families from Kansas City. We're supposed to be here for 4 years. And 4 years passed, and Enrique's almost done with elementary school. We'll just wait till after 6th grade, and then we'll move back. Oh, well, not Diego, my little brother. Nah, he's almost done with, we'll just wait for 2 more years, and then move back. And then we grew up here.
Great origins.
Yeah.
Yes. The questions?
Do you infuse reggae in your music too? I know it's Latin and reggae, but are they about the same?
They're different, but they have similar. I think they have similar roots. If you went down the family tree, you'd get to a similar place. I don't that much. Our music, we don't use that much reggae influence, but I do like it a lot. I enjoy it very much. And dreadlocks were a random thing. I just have very, very coarse curly hair, and so a lot of people think I might play some reggae music, but I do for fun, but not in the band.
Other questions from the audience? Online, are there online questions as well? Okay.
I've never had a chance to play with Chick Corea, but when we were working with Ruben Blades, he had just finished an album where he sang on 2 songs, the Spanish Heart album by Chick Corea. So I was 1 degree of separation from Chick Corea.
I think that's a great question. Who are some of the folks that you listen to? Who's on your list that's playing when you wake up in the morning or when you ride in the car?
So I've been listening. I really like Leon Bridges. I fell in love with his album. How do you pronounce that band from Texas? Khruangbin? How does it? Khruangbin. Yeah. So they're mostly instrumental, and they collaborate with him too. And it's like they're from Houston, and really just wonderful music to listen to. But then I sometimes listen to really heavy rock and roll. If I have to do things like grant applications, I put on Tool. Tool and Slipknot
Good to know.
will get you through a grant application. Because somebody screaming in your ears just like, I got this, I got this.
Other questions from the audience?
Online, are there any artists that you would love to collaborate with?
So the question is, are there any artists you would love to collaborate with from online?
Oh, yeah. There's a bunch. One that's currently performing right now is the Black Pumas. And Adrian Quesada from the band has been a friend from before he started the Black Pumas. And we have talked about collaborating. We have sat in the studio, we've daydreamed some stuff up, and we just haven't made it happen. So that would be one that I hope we can knock off the wish list sooner than later. And then there's some other folks, like as a kid, my dad loved really kind of progressive rock. So do y'all ever know, Peter Gabriel is? Or Genesis? Yeah, so like Peter Gabriel, he did all that cool world music stuff, so that's like in the back of our minds would be amazing too.
What about tours? Where does that lead you in the world travel? Have you had an opportunity? Obviously, we're in a pandemic. It's been a little difficult, but are there certain countries that you look forward to playing, or ones that you have played in that you really appreciate?
So the band is growing in stature in Mexico, and we get to go play at Vive Latino in Mexico in March. So we do South by Southwest, and we go to Mexico. And now we're going to play a festival in June there that's kind of a hard rock festival. The festival in March is in the city, and it's a mix of artists. There's like Latino artists, but the Black Pumas are on the day that we're on, and Gary Clark Jr. and a bunch of other folks. So it should be a really great gig. I'd love to play in Colombia, and Argentina has like a Latin rock history that also is really famous. I'd love to do that. And then I think we've never been to Europe, so that would be really, really exciting. And I don't know how those people would respond to us, but I hope well. I think it'd be fun.
Fantastic. Other questions? Let's just turn it back over to Enrique to hear something else. How about that? Put your hands together again.
All right, thank you. The song's called Amor de mis amores, and I wrote it with my friend Mireya, who sings in an amazing band called Flor de Toloache. And it's she closes out the tune because it's about a man who has lost his love, and he thinks it's because life is unjust, and then the woman comes in to remind him that he had just not treated her right for way too damn long, and that he messed it up himself. Not from any personal experience. All right, here we go. Amor de mis amores, reina de mis días, te entregué todos mis temores, te entregué toda la vida, te cultivé como un árbol bien plantado, te eché agua todos los días, pero no echaste raíces. Esas flores eran de mentira. Oye, amor de mis amores, qué trampa es la vida. Voy a morir llorando, voy a morir sufriendo después del horror de verte con otro querer. ¿Por qué vivir llorando? ¿Por qué vivir sufriendo? Mejor morir que verte con otro querer. Amor de mis amores. Oye, amor de mis amores, qué trampa es la vida. Tengo la suerte de los pobres y tengo la rabia todavía. que el peor de mis temores ha llegado ese día. Voy a morir llorando, voy a morir sufriendo después del horror de verte con otro querer. ¿Por qué vivir llorando? ¿Por qué vivir sufriendo? Mejor morir que verte con otro querer. Amor de mis amores, reina de mis días, te entregué todos mis temores y me tiraste a la calle como un perro callejero. Me dejaste ahí tirado, maltratado. Oye, amor de mis amores. Pero en la verdad tú me trataste mal. Oye, corazón, ¿qué andas diciendo por ahí? Pero en la verdad tú me trataste mal. Pero no se te olvide que en la vida todo tiene un fin. Oye, en la verdad tú me trataste mal. Oye, dices, vives llorando, sufriendo, no puedes vivir sin mí. Oye, en la verdad, tú me trataste mal. No digas más mentiras, amor de mis amores.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. So where can we find your music? It's one question. And the other is, where can we find more information about Art's mentorship?
So the band is Making Movies. So makingmovies.world is our website. And we're on the major socials, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can look up Making Movies and find it relatively quickly. And then for artist mentorship, it's artasmentorship.org. And if you have a young one, our Instagram is very active, so they can follow the thread of all the programs through our Instagram and Facebook feed, but most kids aren't on Facebook, so we use the Instagram quite a bit. Yeah, and connecting with me, you know, I have cards here. Like, would love to meet all of you all and let you know more about what we're doing. Also, Peter here, who's a really valuable asset to the organization in helping us grow all this wonderful work. Please come say hello. So we're happy to meet all of you.
Absolutely. We look forward to partnering with you in the future as well here at the Jazz Museum. For more information on our programs, you can go to americanjazzmuseum.org. Again, you'll find information about our membership there, our program series. Next up in February, at the end of the month, we will feature Logan Richardson, also another KC luminary who is really growing in his career. So we look forward to hearing his story. Also, shout out to all of my staff who worked at this event. Thank you so much. Shout out to Disney Imagineering. So hopefully all of you will have an opportunity to tip into our special Soul of Jazz American Adventure exhibit here through the end of April. April 24th is the closing day, but please get in there and check out a lot of information about the jazz narrative across the U.S. Let's put our hands together one more time for Enrique Chi.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And why not go over to the Blue Room, grab a drink, and get ready to jam. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful evening.